My heart is sick. Hear the cry of distress of my people from a distant land. Is Yahweh not in Zion? Is its ruler not there anymore? And Yahweh replies, why do they provoke me with their carved images, with their useless foreign gods? The harvest is past, summer is ended, and we are not saved. I am devastated, for my people are devastated. I mourn, terror grips me. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why then has the health of my people not been attended to? Oh, that my head were a spring of water and my eyes a fountain of tears, so that I might weep day and night for this slaying of my people. Holy wisdom, holy word, thanks be to God.
I know Barb knows this about me. I don't know if the rest of you know this, but I'm a huge fan of horror movies. This may seem weird because I'm always preaching against violence, and horror movies are typically pretty violent. But I actually think the best horror movies are not about violence, they're about grief. I can give you a ton of examples of this later, but trust me, the best horror movies are usually about dealing with grief and loss. One of my favorite horror authors is, as you might expect, the master of horror himself, Stephen King. I first read Carrie when I was 13, and it's about bullying and abuse, and I was being bullied and abused, and it struck me so deeply, and it made me a Stephen King fan for life, even when he's really grosses me out. Now, just like when I was talking about The Last of Us a couple weeks ago, I do not recommend that you start reading Stephen King books or going to see his movies, but except for The Life of Chuck, it's one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen, and everyone should watch it. But I want to tell you today about a short novella called The Long Walk, which was actually the first novel that Stephen King ever wrote in 1967. When he was a freshman at the University of Maine. It was supposed to be an allegory for Vietnam. It's about America that is ruled by a military junta led by a shadowy figure known only as the Major. It may sound a little too close to home these days. The highlight of the year in this horrible version of America is a reality show. This is way before there were even reality shows, and Stephen King depicts this nationally televised competition known as The Long Walk, where 100 teenage boys start walking south from the Canadian border through Maine and keep walking south. They have to maintain a pace of 4 miles an hour or they're shot if they drop below this pace. They walk and walk and walk until there's only one of them left. And the winner gets anything he wants beyond his wildest dreams and untold riches. In the end, the main character, Ray Garrity, outwalks all the other guys and survives this grueling contest. Like the young soldiers in Vietnam, he has experienced unimaginable violence and watched his friends die one by one. At the finish line, Garrity can see nothing but a dark figure beckoning him forward. And here's how King ends the novel. A hand on his shoulder, Garrity shook it off impatiently. The dark figure beckoned in the rain, beckoned for him to come and walk, to come and play the game. And it was time to get started. There was still so far to walk. This ending, where the supposed winner walks and walks into the dark, haunted me so much that I read this story multiple times over the years. I loved the ambiguity, the mystery, almost the spirituality of the despairing ending. So as you can imagine, I was very excited when they finally got around to making a movie version of The Long Walk, especially during this time period when we appear to be living in a fulfillment of Stephen King's prophecy, where the wannabe major is at the top and encouraging everyone to be militaristic, and we have all these reality shows. The movie was great up until the end. The cinematography was great, the acting was great. Mark Hamill plays the major, and he's just chewing the scenery. But they changed the ending. They changed it drastically. In the movie, instead of the winner striding into the dark mystery, he gets a carbine from one of the soldiers and assassinates the major in an act of revenge. I was so upset at the irresponsibility of this decision that I began loudly denouncing the film in the theater as the final credits were rolling to everyone assembled in the movie theater. I said, especially at this time when there's shooters out there assassinating people as a solution to their problems, this was so upsetting. I ranted in the theater about the myth of redemptive violence, of violence against an individual as a means for bringing about change. So misguided. Which brings me to the prophet Jeremiah, who was also ranting most of the time. Jeremiah spends almost the entire book of Jeremiah angrily ranting at both the rulers and the people of Israel. Jeremiah lived during the time when the northern kingdom had already been conquered by Syria. The people of the north were scattered far and wide or taken into exile. So Jeremiah grew up living with this threat of foreign invasion, either the Syrians or the Egyptians or the Babylonians, who during Jeremiah's lifetime conquered Syria and now wanted to come and take over Israel. Jeremiah is angry with God for forcing him to be a prophet. He's angry with King Josiah for worshiping God in name only and neglecting the poor. He's angry with all the people who he thought were worshiping pagan gods instead of Yahweh. Presumably, he's angry with the Syrians also, who came and took the northern people away. He's angry with King Jehoiakim, who was a puppet of the Pharaoh. He's angry with the entire situation, with the Babylonians about to attack and destroy the temple. But at the end of chapter 8, in this passage we heard, we begin to see Jeremiah's anger crack, and we look beneath the surface of that anger, and we see grief. He says, "Hear the cry of distress of my people from a distant land. Is Yahweh not in Zion? Is its ruler not there anymore?" And Yahweh replies, "Why do they provoke me with their carved images, with their useless foreign gods? The harvest is past, summer is ended, and we are not saved." Jeremiah angrily castigates both the rulers and the people for a number of things, but most of all, again and again, Jeremiah angrily accuses the people of continuing to worship idols. By this time in the history of Israel, King Josiah had declared that worship of God could only happen in the temple in Jerusalem. Receiving from God for not worshiping God correctly. God was teaching them a lesson. This is a near universal human response to suffering, isn't it? When Job, the consummate sufferer of the Hebrew Bible, is struck with all kinds of disasters, his friends come to visit and say, "You must have done something wrong to deserve this terrible punishment. God must be teaching you something." I saw a video of a little girl this week whose home had been destroyed in Gaza City. Her family had been killed. She was about 10 years old, and she was extremely badly injured with her face swollen, and she was crying, "I'm sorry. What did I do? If only I knew what I did wrong, I could maybe apologize." This is the argument that children often tell themselves when they're abused. If only I could be different. If only I could change my behavior, I could earn my parents' love. It's a theme that runs through the whole Hebrew Bible, the idea that if you keep God's law correctly, you will be blessed and rewarded. But if you fail to worship God correctly, you will be punished. Sometimes I think Jeremiah thinks if he just yells at them long enough, they'll fall into line and obey and start worshiping in the temple instead of their local places. But no matter what anybody does, the suffering doesn't end. And of course, anger is a natural human response to suffering. We want to find out who caused it so we can stop it. If it's Almighty God, we want to know how God can be appeased. Like abused children, we want to find the exact words to say, to ask for this punishment to stop. Like the screenwriters of the Stephen King movie I was telling you about, we want to find the person or people responsible for this suffering and punish them. As if shooting the major, who was dehumanized into a caricature of this aviator-wearing dictator, played very well by Mark Hamill, but as if shooting the major would help. But in order to exact revenge on a scapegoat, we have to dehumanize them. Even when we do that, nothing seems to work. No matter what we do, the prayers, the revenge, the anger, the expectation that we will be delivered melts away. As Jeremiah says, summer is over, the harvest has come, and we are not saved. This war has been going on for almost 2 years now. In the end, there's only lament, only grief. Even for Jeremiah, his anger fails him, and he can only weep. "I'm devastated," Jeremiah says finally, "for my people are devastated. I mourn. Terror grips me. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why then has the health of my people not been attended to?" When I was teaching at Northwest School in my last year, I had a sweet little student whose family was very closely aligned with Israel, and all his older siblings had been in the Israeli army. And this sweet kid, I'll just call him Sam, probably not a good thing to call right now, but this kid was planning to go to college for 4 years and then go into the IDF. So if you do the math, 2019, 2023, he's there now. I remember him arguing with me in my philosophy class, asking me impertinent questions. I remember his mom worrying about him when he would get anxious over writing a paper. He was, like all my students, very dear to me. He may be one of the soldiers invading Gaza City right now, where the UN has ruled that a genocide is happening, where warplanes just this week bombed 3 UN schools where the refugees were sheltering, where the largest residential tower in the city and all the other residential towers are being completely destroyed systematically, where every university and school have been destroyed. I listened to an interview with physician Kathleen Gallagher, who's a US Army veteran and volunteer surgeon. She's currently volunteering at Khan Yunis Hospital, which is one of the 2 remaining hospitals in the country for 2 million people, 2 hospitals. Every day in the emergency room, they treat between 200 and 400 patients. Half have injuries from bombings and half have been shot. Dr. Gallagher sees gunshot wounds, targeted gunshot wounds to the head in children, in toddlers. I pray for all those people who are doing that. The power of lament is that it does not ask for anything. It does not angrily demand revenge. It does not ask for an explanation. It just is. Black liberation theologian Cole Arthur Riley writes, "The power of lament as an expression of God's love for the world. After all, the one who created all things and holds all things together cried. And that changes everything." She says, if Christ wept for Lazarus, he must have done so not out of an absence of hope or faith, but out of love. It was an honoring. When we weep for the conditions of this world, we become truth tellers in its defense. People who can say, this is not good, it is not well. People who have seen the face of goodness and refuse to call good and curse by the same name. In lament, our task is never to convince someone of the brokenness of this world. It is to convince them of the world's worth in the first place. True lament is not born from the trite sentiment that the world is bad, but rather from a deep conviction that it is worthy of goodness. We sit with the sorrow, and God sits with us and weeps with us for all the children, the perpetrators, the victims, the hostages, the angry people, the assassins, the people who have nowhere to go, and the people who force them out. And as Riley reminds us, when God bears witness to our lament, it is not for God's consumption or to teach us something. It seems cruel to believe that God would require grief to make a truth known. I think when God bears witness to our lament, we discover that we are not calling out to a teacher, and much less an angry punisher, but inviting God as a nurturer, a mother who hears her child crying in the night. She wakes, rises, and comes to the place where we lie. She rushes her holy warmth against our flesh and says, I'm here. And so with the prophet Jeremiah, we can say, joy abandons me. There is no cure for my grief. My heart is sick. Oh, that my head were a spring of water and my eyes a fountain of tears, that I might weep day and night for the slain of my people. Oh, say shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'akol Yisrael, ve'akol Ishmael, ve'imru, ve'imru, Amen. Our hymn of reflection is, O God, my God. It's in the New Century Hymnal, number 515. 515.
O my God, O gracious God, why do